which is out there that needs some kind of data, some kind of data to some kind of data to store, to use. And for that we need various data types, right? Because otherwise, like say from computer perspective, whether it's a name Abhishek or whether it's your employee ID 1 or a salary 20,000, it changes, and you do not know what value has to be stored. So for that purpose, Java has defined various data types. So that's what we are going to discuss here. And the second thing which we are going to discuss is about control statements. So control statements are nothing but, like say if I'm writing a program, I need to execute certain things, right? There may be some decisioning logic, like if my salary is greater than 20,000, add bonus as well. Or maybe if my name is Abhishek, then grant me the entry. Or if I'm the admin, do this. So there can be various if else logic which can be there. So if else logic, or say decisioning logic, so branching statements. So they are nothing but the control statements. So we'll discuss about them and see like what all things are out there. Okay, so now going down, what are Java data types? So variables are nothing but they are reserved memory locations where we store the data. Okay, and depending on the data type, like whether it's your name, like a string, Abhishek, or whether it's a number, uh, there are different memory locations, in the sense not locations but memory space which the operating system allocates, and that depends on the data type, right? So say if a particular variable has the requirement that it needs a bigger memory location, so you won't be using a smaller memory location data type for that, right? And because of that, what happens is, like say if there's a requirement, I have serious memory constraints because I'm writing an application which is a very huge application, right? And if this is a huge application, and I'm writing all this stuff, it may be the case that I need to create about memory, because after some time my memory might go away. So in that case, instead of using a bigger memory location, a bigger data type, I might be my program might be sufficient to be run with a smaller data type. So all those things are there which we can use, and it depends on the various data types which are available. Now, how many types of data types are there? So there are two types. One is primitive data types and one is reference slash object types. Now, what is the difference? So the thing is that Java has two types of data types. One is primitive, one is reference slash object data types. So as I explained in some of my earlier demo classes as well, and I think most of you might have been part of it, and if not, that's not a problem. So the thing is, and the last class as well as explaining, so in Java, class is the blueprint and objects are the actual representation, right? So when you are creating objects, so you create objects in this way: animal is equal to new animal, giraffe. So if you are creating in this way, this animal, whatever you see here, this is actually reference to an object, right? So new animal, this thing is an object. So if you refer animal is equal to new animal, this reference data type is animal. And if tomorrow you create an employee class, right, or a puppy class, or say Java batch as one of the classes, so if you do that and create a new object, you can use a reference data type which is of type employee, puppy, Java batch, etc., to refer to this newly created object, and this is called as reference data type. Okay. Now this is just for understanding I've mentioned here, because in detail classes, objects, everything we are going to deal slowly and slowly. Now what are primitive data types? So there are various types of data, right? One is like say byte, smaller integer, then like say a little bit bigger integer, then a very long value. So all those things are taken care by
साउंड के लिए बोलो क्या कर रहे हो
so all those things are being taken care.
आवडतं असेल तिकडे
म्यूट के लिए
Sure.
इकडनं नाही तू आता वेबिक्स वर आहे
Shaila, can you go on mute, please?
त्या साईडला आहेस तू आता
Shaila, can you go on mute, please?
इथे आहेस तू
यस यस
Okay. Now, if you go to primitive data types, so primitive data types are the various data which can be stored, and the Java supports byte, short, long, float, double, boolean, and char. Okay. Now, if you see, apart from byte and apart from char and apart from boolean, so short, long, float, and double, they're all dealing with numbers. And the thing is that they're dealing with different range of numbers. So if you have a requirement of, say, your value can only range from 1 to 10, or maybe say 1 to 1000, I mean, there is no need to allocate bigger space. So short, I mean, as the name is itself intuitive, uh, is a right thing to do, because it will have lesser memory footprint. Okay. So Java has total of 8 primitive data types which are defined here. So one is byte, as I told, then short, int, then you have long, float, double, character, and boolean as well. So we have total 8. Okay. Now, if let's go one by one into details all of it, and maybe some usage of that. Okay. Now, what is byte? So byte is, see, in Java world, or in, like in say, in computer world. So we have bits, and 8 bits make up 1 byte. So at the end of the day, all the data which you have, that is in bytes. Okay. So Java give you this byte data type so as to have the flexibility, so that you can manipulate the data at the very raw level it is available. Because say if you are reading a file, for example, if you have an XLS, a spreadsheet, where all the details are there, serial number, name, the people who have joined, the classes, how much money they have paid, and you want to transfer it to some other location, or you want to read it and do some other calculation. For that purpose, you can like connect to this file which is out there and read the data. Now, if you read the data, you can take it in the very raw format, byte, convert it into character, etc., and something else as well. So Java gives you this particular data type to have flexibility to access the raw data at the very base level, which is not like worked upon. And it has 8 bits. Okay. And if you see in 2's complement, if you would have read, like it is I mean, it is a binary representation, and you add 1 and you get the 2's complement for that particular number. But anyways, that's not very important as far as this class is concerned, but if you understand, it will help you. uh, in any 8 bits in Java as well, 1 bit, the first bit, is for sign, and then remaining 7 bits are for the actual binary number. And that's, if you see, the minimum value is minus 2 to the power 7, the maximum value is 2 to the power 7 minus 1. Okay. Now the default value, Java has default values for all the primitive data types. Now let's make sure that we understand it. So the default value is 0, but if you go above and you see reference data types, right? Now there is no default value as such for any of the reference data types. The default value is null. So I mean, there's no assignment as such. But here in bytes or some other things which are there is no null value. I mean, null is something which means that there is no value which is defined. And here if you see, the default value for byte is 0. Okay. And as I explained, I mean, byte, if you see, it's very small. So byte is 8 bits, short is 16 bits, int is 32 bits. So normally we use int unless we have some serious memory constraints. Okay. And here if you see, it's 8 bits. So if you have large arrays and you only have to store the data and not actually, like say, do some number operations on it, it's just a data which has to be saved in some place, or to be transmitted to some other location. And byte is the best bet because it is smaller, and that's why it has smaller memory footprint. Okay. Now let's come to the next one, which is short. So if you see, short is a 16 bit. Again, the minimum value is minus 2 to the 15 and maximum is 2 to the 15 minus 1. So if you see it from 32,000 positive to negative 32,000, it has a bigger range. So if your data, if you're sure that your data will vary in between these two numbers, I mean, it makes sense to use it, because if you see, it's smaller than other data types which support numbers. And the other data types which support numbers, if you go above and see, are short, long, float, and double. Short is 16. Okay, right? And I think I missed int here. So in fact, I've mentioned int here in addition to int. So int is 16, short is 8, long is short is 16, int is 32, long is 64. Float and double are basically to store decimal values, in a sense fraction values. So 3.45, you won't be able to represent it using long, you won't be able to represent it using int. So for that you need to use either float or double. Okay, so float is also actually 32-bit single precision number, and details like I'm going to discuss down below. And double is 64-bit double precision number. Okay, now let's go down. So byte we've already discussed. Coming back to short, we've already discussed. So int is again bigger data for storing numbers. And if you see, no, Raghav, you don't have to memorize all this stuff, but let's go through it, because in day-to-day basis you'll use these data types. So maximum value etc. need not be remembered, but it will help you just like to have some theoretical knowledge. So because I mean you need to know the data types, right? So int data type is 32 bits, and the minimum value and maximum value is this. So if you see, I mean for most of the practical purposes, 2 to the power 31 minus 1 is sufficient for you to store the data. Okay, now so you can use it by default. So if you don't have any memory constraints, as I was saying earlier, go ahead and use int. But if you have memory constraints, then there are various things which has to be looked into, that whether my data has to be only in this limit, should I use short, should I use byte. So that kind of determination has to be done. Okay, now coming back to int. So in the default value is 0. Long is actually, as the name suggests, you can see a bigger version of int. So int was storing only till 2 to the power 31 minus 1, right? Now long is 64 bit. Okay, and 1 bit is reserved for sign. So remaining 63 bits, if you see here, 2 to the power 63 minus 1, that is the maximum value. Minimum value is minus 2 to the power 63. So for, I think, most of the purposes, long is going to suffice all the scenarios. Okay, and I mean in most of my programming career, I have used int for most of the scenarios, and double for fractional values. So that's how the deal is, but you should know about all this stuff, because depending on your requirements, you can use either of these data types. Okay, and the default value is 0L. So 0L is nothing. L is just a suffix which shows that this data type is of type long. That's it. Otherwise L doesn't have any more significance. So if you see here, there is L. If you see here, there is L. It doesn't mean that it is like 1000 L is some value where you have L at the end. L is just there to signify that, I mean, it's a long value, nothing else. It's still a number. Okay. Now let's go below float. So float is single precision 32-bit floating point number, which essentially means that it can store decimal values. So if you have to denote 3.4567, you can use float. Okay. Now float is like, I mean, it's single precision. So in the sense that, like, say you have 32 bits, right? So in 32 bits, 1 bit, as I said, is reserved for sign. Okay. Now so 1 is reserved for sign. After that, 8 bits are reserved for the actual number. So if you have 3.45, next 8 bit is used to store the number 3. Okay, and the remaining bits are used to store the fractional values. Now using that, you can store most of the numbers. So 3.456 can be stored using float. But the thing is that after some time, since the number of bits are less where you can store the fractional value, it might not give you the exact precision. Okay, so that's why it's called that its precision is less. And if you are actually dealing with money etc., it's advisable not to use it, because there you might not like the rounding off, right? So sometimes the requirement is that if you're buying a share on, say, icicdirect.com, you require that if it is 12, I'm just giving an example. So if it is 12.435, okay, so if it is 12.435, you might require to buy it in that much money itself. There is no rounding off, which is a requirement. So in that case, float might not be the correct one, and you can use double in that scenario. Okay, and again, I mean, it depends on the precision level which you want. Sometimes the thing is that, I mean, for even like for the exact precise values, you might not be sufficient with double as well. So in that case, there are other, not data types, but some other uh, inbuilt, what you can say, custom classes which are there in the Java libraries, which are already provided. So like say big decimal, java.lang.bigdecimal, which is actually used to do these money operations. They do not round off at all. So they are basically custom classes written on top using all these internal data types only. There is no other thing which is out there. So all these custom classes take double, float, int, etc., and use them to define what needs to be done. So just for an example, the big decimal class, and if you have time at home, you can go back and look into it. We can also look into other classes, but not right now because we have not yet reached that level. But big decimal, like say when it takes a number, one of the values which we initialize in the starting is also the precision level which you want. So you can specify there you want the data that you want the data to be precise till the fifth level. So what that means is that 3.4567. So after 5 till 5 digits after the decimal point, I mean it will not be rounded off. It will be only rounded off after that. So that is the meaning. So you can define the precision level which you want, and that works pretty well. But again, I mean these things are required only if that much precision is required. For most of the practical purposes, float and double will do the job. Okay, so I mean, that's very much about it. Now, say Boolean. So, what is Boolean? So, sometimes the requirement is that we have to execute some logic, okay? And the logic has to be executed on the basis of yes or no. So, that yes or no answer comes from this particular data type, which is Boolean, okay? So, Boolean has only one bit of information. So, internally it is either 0 or 1, okay? But in the like on the UI which you see is Boolean has two values, either it is true or false. So if you just define it like this, Boolean is today Sunday, then the default value is false. Okay. So if you print it out here, new test, and see this is how you create a new object, new test. And again, those people who have joined first time, don't get bogged down by it. I mean, those classes are yet to come. And if you do is today Sunday, since I've not set anything, the values, the default value is false. So this prints false. Now character. So character is basically like say uh, I mean they're basically alphabets. Okay, so English alphabets, Chinese alphabets, Hindi alphabets, uh, Telugu alphabets. So all these alphabets are there, right? So that is denoted by char. Earlier the usage was to use ANSI. So ANSI is basically American National Standard Interface Code. So it defines mostly English level language. Okay, now after that we started using Unicode, which supports most of the languages around the world. So it has a bigger range, and char data type supports it using this single 16 bit. And again, I mean in that we can go and see that the minimum value is this, maximum value is this, and all your like letters etc will be supported using char data type. Now, one of the data types, which is not data types, but one of the classes, one of the internal classes, which is there in Java, which is very important, is string. So that is java.lang.string. Okay. Just hold on, I'll show you. So java.lang.string. So this is the one which I was talking about. Okay. Now this is actually one of the very important classes in Java. Okay, java.lang.string, and it is important because I mean, most of the work, like say if you have to store the name Abhishek, or if you have to store department name, etc., you have to represent it using number of characters, right? Because one character just represents A, the second character represents B, the third character represents H. Now you can have an array of characters, number of characters which are together to represent it. But everywhere if you are going to use that, it's going to be cumbersome. The coding is going to be cumbersome. So for that, there is one string class which internally defines this array of characters, the number of characters together, and it can be used to represent your name, your department name, etc. So for all practical purposes, like say word, whatever I am saying right now, every word like say a literal is a source code. So literal, source, code, representation, all these words can be described in Java using string. Okay, and in fact, all of these things together can be described using string. So just wanted to give you that intro because that is going to be a bit more important going forward. Okay, now let's go below. So what is literal? Now we have seen all the data types, right? Let's say char letter a is equal to a, or this is today Sunday, etc. So literal is nothing but a source code representation of a fixed value, okay, and they are represented directly in the code without any computation. Now what that means is, say if you have byte a is equal to 68, this 68 is nothing but literal. Okay, this is a fixed value, and this is being assigned to some primitive type variable, but this is a fixed value which is out there. A is a literal. Okay. Now, if you see the numbers which are highlighted here, decimal is equal to 100, octal is equal to something. Now, say in a programming world, you are you are reading about the basics of Java programming, right? Now, the thing is that oh yeah. So the thing is that I mean there can be some other folks who have the requirement that they want something else, in the sense that they want to work on octal numbers, and that's their requirement of their project. Some of the people might be requiring to work on hexadecimal numbers, and just for reference, octal numbers means the numbers to the base 8. Binary numbers, so like whatever we have 0, 1, etc., is to the base 2, and hexadecimal is to the base 16. So to represent hexadecimal number in Java world, you prefix it with 0x, okay, and to represent octal number, you prefix it with 0. Okay, so if you have to represent normal number like say 1, you just represent it using 1. The normal decimal numbers, the like whatever we follow. Okay, and this is a string literal which is talking about hello world. This is a string literal, and you can have string reference types to refer to it. So if I go here and say java.lang.string hello, okay, and this is a reference data type, this hello world, because this is what I explained to you earlier. Let's go above and see here. So reference variables are created using defined constructors of the classes. They are used to access objects. The string is essentially an object, but it is so much in use, it is so much in vogue, that most of the folks will say that it is like almost equivalent to one of the data types which Java has. Okay, and once you define it like this, you can give the value as hello world. Okay, and there is string literal. So when you say string literal, you can just define the constant value directly like this. Okay, so this is what this is one of the other literals which is out there, the string literal, which I wanted all of you to know. Okay, now let's go down, let's see what else we have. Okay, yes, example string literal is covered. So this is all about the data types which we have. Now every other data type, or say collection, and if you have slight familiarity with any other programming languages as well, every programming language has one way or the other number of collections which are out there. Okay, like say list. Now list is nothing but like say number of elements together. So in such ways you have various collections, like say you can have key value pairs, like you can show that my employee ID 1 is with Abhishek, 2 is with Raghav, 3 is with Rajat, 4 is with Raj. So you can store these values, and tomorrow in the program, in some other place, you can retrieve the name Abhishek using the value 1, the key 1. Okay, so this key value pair is nothing but a map. Okay, and don't get bogged down by it. I'm just trying to make you understand that such collections exist, and internally we all use all these data types only, whatever we discussed. So these things, whatever we discussed right now, they are the very basics of the Java data types, the Java language. And maybe in long run, if say you start working on these stuff, if a year later if I ask you about character int, what is a data type, like what is the length, what is the maximum value, you might not even know it, and that's not even required. This is just theoretical knowledge for your understanding. If you know it, well and good. Now coming to control statements. So what are control statements? So control statements are nothing but they are, as the name suggests, they are used to control the flow. Flow of what? Flow of program. Okay. They just control the flow of the program. Like where you have to go. So basically the decisioning logic, or the number of times if you have to iterate, that iteration logic, or if you are executing some piece of program and that is no longer required, then you have to break out of it. So they are basically called as jump statements. So these three types are there, which are part of control statements. If I ask you, like, what is a control statement? So control statement is nothing but, I mean, they are the statements which are used to control the flow of the program. And there are three types, there are three categories. One is selection statements, iteration statements, jump statements. Okay. Now going below, let's discuss one by one. So what are selection statements? So selection statements are of different types, like they are either if else, nested if, switch, and conditional. So as the name suggests, selection statements are used for what? They're used for selecting something. So if you're using if else, you have some condition, and on the basis of that selection, you are executing some logic. Okay, so that is what we are going to discuss right now. And towards the end, once we have discussed selection, then iteration, then jump, then we'll come back here and see that you understand these definitions in a much better way. So if we come below, what is if? So if executes a block of code, only the specified expression is true. So I was saying that you have to evaluate an expression. If the value is true, you execute that code. If not, then apart from if, you have one if else statement. Okay. So if you see here, see, we have defined two primitive data types. We have used int. The value of a is 10. The value of b is 20. Okay. And if the value of a is greater than b, which in this case it's not, but if it is greater than b, then you have to print this. If it is less than b, you have to do this. Now this is a sort of decisioning logic which is out there in if. Now instead of writing two ifs, like say if a is greater than b, if a is less than b, you can combine both of them together. If a is greater than b, print a is greater than b. Otherwise, print something else. So that is if else statement, like the one which is done out here. A is greater than b, print it out, otherwise use the else part. Okay, so if else is there out in Java. And when I say, the other thing which was mentioned here is nested if. And nested if is nothing but, like say, ifs within ifs. So I can have if here, okay, and inside that I can have another if. So basically whatever you are seeing here, I mean, you can have another if layer inside it. So it can be something like this. Nested if, as the name suggests, nested. So a is greater than b. I can actually go inside this logic. I can have another layer. We can say if b is greater than c, and I can define another primitive data type c. So this is nothing but nested if. Or you can have multiple conditions out there in if a is greater than b and b is greater than c, then do this. So this operator is nothing but it represents and. So there are and, you have or. So or basically means one condition has to be satisfied. If both the condition has to be satisfied, we use and. So that's the meaning of it. Okay. Now come back here. So after if, I mean if else is out here, it's pretty much straightforward. What else do we have? So we have switch statement. So what is actually switch? Switch is, I mean, as the name suggests, it's sort of key. Okay. So the thing is that you have a value, and depending on that value, you decide on what needs to be executed. So you don't have to write the exact if else. Depending on that value, you can actually jump onto different pieces of the code and execute that. So let's see that with an example. See, this is how it is. See, switch. Now in switch, you give a value. Like say, if you have defined an integer a, then you can give the integer here. Then case 1, you have defined statement here. Case 2, you define some other values here. Case 3, some other statements are defined, and default is 4. Now say if I go back here and say I was using the integer a here, okay, a as 10, okay. Now what I have defined here is 1, label 1, label 2, label 3. So I have case 1, case 2, case 3. So it doesn't match, right? So the default part will get executed. Now if the value of a was 1 and I was passing a here in switch, so then basically here, I mean this one would have got executed. So switch is basically, I mean, you pass a value And you don't have to write if else. You know that the value is 1, I need to do this, and the value is 2, I need to do this. So there is no expression which has to be evaluated. It's just certain value which has to be used, and that case switch comes very handy. And this is the format of switch. Now this was all about uh, selection statements. In the next we have iteration statements. So what is iteration? So iteration is basically executing a fixed set of instructions again and again, number of times. Okay. So as I mentioned here, it is essential that a program be able to execute the same set of instructions multiple times. Okay. And for that, Java provides you for loop, while loop, and do while. So there are three things which Java gives it to you. We'll discuss again like all of them one by one. So while loop. Now what is while loop? So while loop means that till the expression which I give in this boolean expression like location, until that is true, keep on executing the set of instructions here till infinity. I mean, like say if a is greater than 10, if by mistake I write while a is greater than 10, and say I do not modify the value of a inside this block, then this particular block will keep on executing till ever, and the only option available is to stop this program. Otherwise, Java is not going to stop it from itself. Okay, so that's why we have to design. I mean, whatever expression you give here has to be, has to evaluate to false, so that your program comes out of this loop in certain scenarios. So you have to, like, whatever is your logic, you have to write this properly. So if we come here, like, let's see this with an example. Now x is 10. While x is less than 20, okay, you keep on printing it. Okay. So x is 10, right? Now, if the first time once you come here, you print the value of x. Now x plus plus, what it does is it increments the value. So x plus plus, x plus plus is equivalent to, this is same as x is equal to x plus 1. So that essentially means that you increment the value of x by 1. So you keep on incrementing the values, so you'll print 10, 11, 12, all these values until it reaches 20. So once it reaches that limit value till 19, and once the value is 20, so 20 is less than 20 doesn't satisfy, that value is false, so it comes out, right? So that satisfies. Now if you write something like, say, if when x is less than or say when while x is greater than 10, instead of x is less than 20, you write x is greater than 10. So if you do that, you can keep on printing the value of x till ever, because that condition is always true. Inside you're incrementing the value and the condition is x is greater than 10. So Java will not know when to stop it, so it will keep on printing it. So while using such loops, you have to be sure that the data which you provide and the expression which you put here has to evaluate to false in certain circumstance. Otherwise, your code is going to get executed over and over again. Okay. Now, what is do while? So do while is same as while loop. The difference is do comes first. Now, I'm explaining in this way so that you understand what needs to be done. When do comes first, it essentially means do this particular block of code at least once. Execute this particular block of code at least once. So if I was using do while here, then whether it satisfies this condition or not, and obviously the expression is different, which you're going to see below. So whether it satisfies the expression or not, this piece of code would get executed once at least. Okay, like see, this is written in this way: do, then your statement, then the while is towards the end. So from the sample program perspective, it's like do, then your system.value x plus plus, and while is x is less than 20. Okay, so here there is no difference. Why? Because x is less than 20 is out there. Okay, now say if instead of x is less than 20, I have x is less than 10. If that is the case, okay, if that is the case, then this will print. This will print a value of how much? 10. The value get incremented to 11. Once it comes here, 11 is less than 10. No, it comes out. So it prints the value of x as 10 one time. But if you use the same thing here in while loop, while x is less than 10, and inside that you have the same piece of code, it's not going to give you any output statements. Okay, and why? Because this condition did not satisfy. The difference between while and do while is that do while, whether the condition gets satisfied or not, it will get executed at least one time. And if it has to get executed more than one time, then the obviously that expression has to be evaluated true, otherwise more than once it's not sufficient. Okay, now I mean that is the deal is while, do while. Now let's come down to for loop. Okay, now what are for loops? So for loops are nothing but say executing things number of times is for loop. Okay, so for loop is basically you give the starting range, starting values, and say that I want to execute it in this way. So for example, I'll show you here. If I define, so if I define for int I is equal to 0, I less than 10, I plus plus, and then I have the same piece of code which was out here, which is like say this one, right? So I have the same system out statement here. Now what that means is if I mean the starting value of int is 0 till the time int is less than 10, okay, I, and every time you increment it by 1 for every iteration, you keep on executing this piece of code. Okay, so this the first time as it gets executed, the next time as it goes here, the value of I is 1, again it gets executed. Then the next time the value of I is 2, again it gets executed. So it gets executed until this condition I is less than 10 is satisfied. Okay, and that is a for loop which Java has given to you. So this for loop is available to us, but what changed in Java 5 was that enhanced for loop was introduced. Now what enhanced for loop means is that, and that will be pretty much clear from the program here. Earlier, before Java 1.5, this was not possible. INTX numbers, I mean, you have a particular number and you're iterating over it 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. This was not possible. Okay, so for basically one thing which is possible is you define an initial value, okay, you define a conditional statement, and you define how to increment, and this part was optional. You can leave it like this, and if you leave it like this, it is inside this particular piece of statement that this has to get satisfied in some way or the other. If you miss modifying this particular statement here, it will keep on executing forever. Okay, now for doing this, the only alternative was that you define a integer I, okay, and you define that it has to be executed 5 times, right? So you define that it has to be say less than 6, and every time the value will increase by 1. So for 5 iterations, you will go inside this numbers array and print the number one by one here. Okay. Now you can do this, not a problem. But what was seen is that this is cumbersome, right? This is not required. If we have to iterate over a collection, then why not directly have that option? So Java 5 gives you that option. So basically you can define the INTX here and you can iterate over the numbers. Okay, so this is how it is done. Now let's go back to the basics. Let's try to understand what is written out here because that will give you a better understanding. So the first part, whatever we gave here, INTX, right? So if you see the declaration, so the newly declared block variable which is of type compatible with the elements of the array you are accessing. So INTX is what? Integer. The elements which you are trying to access is what? They are integers. Okay, so it is compatible. The variable will be available within the for block and its value would be the same as a current array element. So if I define it like this for INTX colon numbers, first time x will have the value of 20, in the next iteration the value will be 20, the next iteration 30, then 40 and then 50. It is same as actually defining a loop like this from 0 till till it satisfies this condition, and every time go and manually find out what is out there like numbers 1, numbers 2, numbers 0 and take out these values. I mean Java has provided you a better way so that you don't have to include that piece of logic like that redundant piece of logic every time. Okay, now expression, this is what was expression. So here it is not an expression, but you can actually put an expression here. Okay, so this evaluates to the array you need to loop through. The expression can be an array variable or method call that returns an array. Okay, now as I explained here, like say it will loop through. If you see the value which it prints first time is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and again you can iterate over over not only over numbers, over strings as well. So these are string literals. James, Larry, Tom, Lacey, these are string literals. And you can iterate over it using string name. So again, the type is compatible with what is out there in the second part. And you can print all of them one by one. Okay, James, Larry, Tom, Lacey. And since we're discussing it, it's not related, but since you'll see this number of times, I think it's better that I explain it out to you. System.out.print. System is one of the basic libraries provided by Java. System is a class, inbuilt class, which comes embedded in JDK. And system.out.print, what it does is that it prints the output on the console. So if you're running it from your Eclipse IDE, integrated development environment, or if you're running it in console, it will print it out there. You can see the output in Eclipse IDE as well using this. Okay. Now, this is out. So this is used to print. So this is system.out.print. So what it does is it prints in the same line. And if you have to change the line, you have to do /n, and then the next line you get James, Larry, Tom, Lacey. But if every time you print, like say 10, next line 20, next line 30, that is a requirement, you can directly use system.out.print ln. So instead of using print, you can use print ln. Let me see if I've used it anywhere. If not, I'll just show you. See, it's not used anywhere, but here you can use system.out.print ln. So after print, you have L and N. So that basically prints everything in new line. So you'll have 10 in one line, 11 in another line, 12 in another line. So that's the way it goes. Okay. Now coming back to jump statement. So if you recall the control statement. So what are the control statements? So control statements were the statements which were actually controlling the flow of the program. And there are three different types. One was selection, where selection statements included if, else, wherever you make the selection, you make the decision. That is selection statements. The next thing which we discussed was iteration statements. So wherever you have to execute the code number of times, you have iteration statements. And the iteration statements have three variants. One is for loop, while loop, and do while loop. Okay, so let's go back. So control statements, three types. What are those three types? Selection statements, iteration statements, jump statements. Selection statements has multiple types: if statement, if else, nested if, switch. Okay, and iteration has for loop, while loop, and do while. The third part was jump statement. So what is jump? Jump, as I explained, you're running a piece of program. Okay, and because some condition which it got satisfied, you do not want to run it further. Okay, or you want to come out of it. Okay, so jump statement gives you that facility. So jump statements are used to unconditionally transfer the program control to another part of the program. Again, this is of three types: break, continue, and return. So what is break? So break is nothing but you're executing a piece of code, and once that is done, you no longer want to execute it further. So break statement is always used with iteration statements. So if you see here, I've written a for loop which anyway will get executed 5 times, and after 3 times my work is done. I do not need to do anything more. So in that case, what do? I can leave it for the program to execute for 2 more times, but that is not required, and that at the same time can affect my logic as well. So what is the way out? You can use break. Okay, you can use break. So when you use break, it comes out of this particular for loop. So only 3 times this for loop will get executed. For 0, 1, 2, 4 times and 4, but not for whereas 5. Okay. Now the thing is that you can write break like this, or if you have, you had nested if, right? I can have a scenario where I can have nested fors, right? So if I go here, I have for statement like this, and inside this I can have another for statement where I am using J. So if you have studied maths in your plus two etc., we had matrix, two-dimensional matrix. So for representing this, you can use like this, right? Now here you have two-dimensional. For representing two-dimensional arrays, to setting the values there, you have to use iteration statements of for loop twice in this way. So if you have this way and you want in certain condition, like say if var is equal to 3, right, you want to break. Now you can break out of it. So break only breaks out of the current loop which is out here, which means this particular loop. However, if your hierarchy is complex, if you have multiple for statements, you have multiple jump statement, then writing in this way becomes confusing because you have to find out where it will come out. So what you can do for that is you can define the labels. You can mention that this particular for loop is outer, okay, and you can mention it as break outer. So from readability perspective, it improves it. Okay, so that is what is meant by it. So there are two types, labeled and unlabeled. For all practical purposes in industry, mostly we use this because we do not have those many layers of for loops in every scenario. Okay, but I mean, if you use in this way, it's going to improve readability and nobody is going to question that this is wrong. And this is not going to introduce any additional performance or any other such issues as well. Now coming back to continue. So what is continue? So break, I mean, the names which they have chosen are very intuitive. So break is breaking out of the flow of the program. Continue is let's continue with it. So what that basically means is, like say if for var is equal to 3 we are breaking. Now say for example if var is equal to 3, I had some logic here. Okay, some logic to insert data in the DB, right? Or the scenario was that for all the attributes, like for all the vars which are out here, that is for 0, 1, 2, 4 and 5, for all these four values, I need to execute certain piece of code but not for 3. So in that case what you do is, for var is equal to 3, you say continue. Okay, you just mention continue. So what that means is, do not execute further pieces of code which are written after this if statement. So after this if statement, I can have multiple statements as well, right? I can have like logic to insert in DB, right? uh, to show something on UI. So all this kind of logic can be there, and I do not want it to get executed for the value as 3. In that case, I can use continue. Okay. Now let's see what is out here. So continue statement is used when we want to skip the rest of the statement in the body of the loop and continue with the next iteration of the loop. So this is the same as what I explained. Again here you have labeled and unlabeled for the same reason I explained for loop. Okay, so you can either mention as continue, okay, continue outer, or you can just mention continue. Now the third thing which is out there is return statement. So what is return statement? So return in a loop instructs the program to immediately quit the current method and return to the calling method. Now like leave Java, leave C++, any other language. The basics of computer is what? If you're writing some code, some program, what do you want? You want some data out of it, right? And that data you can have from multiple places. So in the sense that like the same code you can modularize and put in different methods, functions. So functions slash methods are nothing but pieces of code which are kept together, and they can execute a piece of code, right, and they can return a value. So they have the option of returning a value, right? Now this value return can be towards the end of the execution of the method, or maybe depending on some condition or in some scenarios you find it in the middle of the example itself. So after 2 or 3 statements, you know that the value for this particular execution which I am going to do is 3. Okay, so in that case no need to execute further. You can take that value and return from there. And not only value. So there are two types of methods which you write in Java. Okay, so one method is where you return a value. Okay, other is where you don't return any value. And if you don't return any value, you suggest how do you increase volume here? I can use WordPad, maybe there it will be easier. Okay, so Java has two types of functions. One is what returns value. The second is what it doesn't return value. So if it doesn't return value, we represent it using void. So void is basically a way to say to the Java compiler that we are not returning anything back. So we'll execute some piece of code, we will insert the data in the DB and say that, I mean, just be done with it. We're not going to say or return any flag or say that we have done the job back to you. So this is what we're going to do. So void is out there. Now in case of void as well, say if I have to insert DB and the data is not correct, I know that in the first line itself that the data is not correct. So what to do? So in that scenario, what needs to be done is that I need to return back. Okay. So in the same place, I can just write return. So instead of saying like return the value, I can just return the statement. So there are 2-3 ways, right? One is return, where you write return primitive data type. Okay. Or return reference data type. Or just return. So if I have to return a value of say variable, I can just say return var. Okay, and there I had earlier I was showing reference data types where we had defined something like this. Okay, so I can return this as well using return animal. But see, if I don't have to return anything, I just want to be done with this method, I can just write return. Okay, and that is what they would have explained here as well, like say here return. So return just means be done with this particular call. So this line will not get executed. Okay, so this is I had for today Java data types and control statements. These are the questions which is out there, and like say last time I only saw that Aarti has replied back, and I'll get back to her, but she I think is the only one who has replied back with all the answers. No, good work, Aarti, and other folks can just reply back to me with all your answers. We can discuss the question and answers here, but until I see that you have given an effort to find out what is asking about, it's no point discussing them because that's not going to like take you anywhere. So for today, this is the other questions. I'll forward this PDF. Go through it, come up with the answers, and once say I have the answers from most of the folks, let's discuss it out here. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Tell me.
Yeah, so would you be sending this PDF with questions to us? Because I didn't receive these questions for the earlier class and I didn't receive the link too for today's session. I don't know whether my email address is missed out in your sent list.
See, actually, I mean, see, I have been told that I have to send it over to the H2K folks and they'll send it over to you. So after the class, what I did was I sent over the PDF to them. I can check back with them why they did not send it over to you. Second thing which I did was Usha had replied back to me over my email address. So I actually forwarded it to her and asked her to forward it to all the folks. Maybe she was not having your email ID. So you can give me out here. I can include you in the email, and whatever I have then from the last PDF as well, I can send that one as well. Okay.
Okay, yeah, just make a note of my ID. Do you want me to give it, say it right now or?
You can ping it in the chat. That way it will be easier for me.
Okay. So when do we turn in these assignments?
As and when you are done, like say before the next class.
Okay. So the next class is on Wednesday, right?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, how can we actually find out the flow of the program on command line or in Eclipse?
When you say flow of the program, what exactly do you mean?
I mean, the method calls
Right.
and everything,
See, the
how
thing is,
the memory assignments, everything, how it is
right.
going on.
See, the thing is that whether you can use whatever way you want. Okay, so you can use Eclipse. Like right now, I'm using Spring Tool Suite, which is essentially a like Spring version over Eclipse. So at the backend, they're using Eclipse only. Okay, now you can use Eclipse to go through the flow of the code. Like you can go here and check what is out there. Like say if I have this training project, right? So I can go here and check out what is the class, etc. What are the methods which are getting called. So this is going to give you the flow. You can use command line, but again, I mean, it depends on your expertise with Unix and command line statements that you will be able to do it properly or not. But you can use TextPad, etc. as well. Eclipse is the standard in one way or the other, so you can download Eclipse and start using it.
Yeah, I'm using Eclipse. I actually meant by how it does internally.
Internally, it's a Java program only, like whatever packages you write, like say this is one package, right? So it will place it together. So if you see other things which are out here, now you have, now it again depends on the way in which you have created a project. So if you have SRC main Java, you define packages and you mention all the packages out here. Okay. Now these packages are nothing but Java files. Now these Java files are nothing but they're actually files. Like you have Word file, you have XLS file. Similarly, you have .java files, and they are placed in somewhere in your hard drive. Okay. So when you create project and start importing all these these Java files, Eclipse shows it in a proper way to you. You create workspace in the starting where this project folder is created, msp-web, and there, I mean, all these classes gets imported. So that's how Eclipse maintains a reference. I mean, internally it's hardcore Java. Anything else?
So when can I receive the recording for the previous class?
For previous class, actually I used GoToMeeting link for doing the
Mm-hmm.
recording, and I had asked them to send it over. If they have not sent it, I'll ask them again. For today class,
Okay.
I have actually like been